Hi, what's up? I'm Channel Pup, the mascot for the Level-Headed Fanboy, and today I've cooked up something real special for you. For today's episode of the Spider-Man Retrospective, we will be looking at Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the 2018 animated film from Sony Pictures Animation. This film has an incredibly positive reputation among Spider-Man fans, and I can absolutely see why. So we're going to be talking all about this movie today, and what great timing, because Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel, is coming really soon. So sit back, put your mask on, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a lot. The year is 2011. Marvel's Ultimate Universe, led by Brian Michael Bendis, is in its 11th year, and with it comes a colossal shakeup. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, the most beloved hero in the Ultimate Comics. Heck, the most beloved hero in Marvel history, maybe even the most beloved superhero in all of comic book media, well, alongside Batman and Superman, of course, dies, age 15, surrounded by his loved ones, held in the arms of his beloved Mary Jane Watson. Now, of course, this wasn't the first time Spider-Man had kicked the bucket, but this was the Ultimate Universe. This universe operated pretty differently to the Marvel 616 universe, focusing on a tighter, more cinematic, more cohesive narrative. So if Spider-Man was getting killed, chances are they meant it in this universe.
Nope.
But while Peter Parker may have been killed off, the legacy of Spider-Man would live on in the Ultimate Universe, as 13-year-old Miles Morales would find himself imbued with the powers of Spider-Man, and then some. And he would go on to become the Spider-Man of a new generation. While I didn't have a huge amount of love for the Ultimate Universe myself, the initial run of Ultimate Comics' All New Spider-Man is one of my favorites in the Ultimate Universe. I remember reading this purely out of curiosity and loving this new direction much more than I did the original Peter run in the Ultimate Universe. I think what made Miles Morales work so well is that, okay, Peter Parker was always intended to be the everyman, the hero that could be you. But given that his stories had spanned almost 50 years by this point, the character, in a meta sense, has a legendary status. Peter Parker, yes, he's an everyman in his universe, sure, but he's one of the most iconic characters in all of comic book history too. So it begs the question, imagine having to step into that Spider-Man costume yourself, in your own circumstances, having to live up to the legacy of that beloved character. Ultimate Comics' All New Spider-Man was supposed to be all about that, as a huge component of Miles' origin story was whether or not he even had the right to be Spider-Man. His story took different turns. Rather than his uncle being his greatest supporter, his uncle was his greatest enemy. His parents stayed alive fairly late into his run before Venom appeared and killed his mother. He has additional powers, which still keep in theme with the abilities of a spider, and might I also add an absolutely gorgeous reimagination of the iconic Spider-Man costume. Miles Morales caught on big time, but such is life with some of the best ideas in comics, it's safe to say that Miles as a character, as a concept, outshone the stories that he was in, as his own stories would often be interrupted by greater Ultimates level events, and unfortunately a lot of repeats of iconic Peter arcs. So as great as this concept and this character was, he was unfortunately all too often held back from really becoming his own Spider-Man. Fast forward to 2018, it's a big year for superhero cinema, a damn big year. Black Panther would go on to become a classic in the MCU. The first part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's major Avengers event drops in theaters with Avengers Infinity War, and boy did it ever live up to the hype, even killing off our brand new beloved MCU Spider-Man. The long-awaited Incredibles 2 releases after over a decade of being the most obvious Pixar movie to deserve a sequel. Ant-Man and the Wasp happened, I guess. Teen Titans Go to the Movies was a critical hit. Sony had struck back with their first Venom film, Aquaman was on the horizon, and Sony would be bringing us their very first Spider-Man movie of their very own since the collaborative deal with Disney. The animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And for the very first time, this Spider-Man film would not focus on Peter Parker. This would be the very first Spider-Man film to focus on a different person behind the mask, as Miles Morales was the main Spider-Man for this adventure. This was huge, as we were yet to even have a Batman Beyond movie. We are still yet to get a Batman Beyond movie. I wonder if we'll ever get a Batman Beyond movie. Sorry, what was I saying? That being said, this isn't the first time a comic book movie or TV show has focused on a later iteration of its titular character. Put it this way, it wasn't Jay Garrick that appeared as the Flash in Justice League, and Scott Lang was the Ant-Man of the MCU as opposed to Hank Pym. But this is Spider-Man we're talking about, and we're getting a movie focused on Miles Morales only 7 years after his conception? That's insane! Now, it's time for a confession. One of my biggest regrets in life is that I didn't see Into the Spider-Verse when it came out in cinemas. I was in nerd protest mode. See, there was this general belief that Sony were making projects like Venom and Into the Spider-Verse as a means of testing the waters, seeing what they could achieve without the intervention of Marvel Studios. Any results were ultimately going to be deciding factors in whether or not to renew the collaborative deal between them and Disney, and that does make sense. So, as a form of protest, I didn't watch either Into the Spider-Verse or Venom in the cinema. I waited for them to come to Netflix. I didn't want to be part to blame for when the rights to Spider-Man would go back to Sony. Now look, that's past Pup's prerogative, but it's safe to say that I really, really, really regret not seeing Into the Spider-Verse in the cinema. Venom, not so much, but we'll get there when we get there. Because if the movies are anywhere near as good as Into the Spider-Verse, I don't care who makes them, I don't care what universe is set in, I don't care what studio birthed them, inject them into my veins. Besides, what's one admission ticket but a drop in the water? Okay, yeah, if everybody has that logic, it's bound to be a huge success, but screw it, I can only think and act for myself. I'm not the entire Spider-Man fanbase. Fuck all of that to death. Delusions. I did have some other reservations at the time as well, though. I was pretty fatigued by the idea of having more than one Spider-Man at once, wasn't really fond of the original Spider-Verse comics, and I just really wanted a Miles Morales film without the multiverse aspects. I also deemed what they were doing to Peter as kind of offensive, as he was seen in the trailers as this schlub that eats burgers and is such a loser that it just felt like this weird death by comparison way of making Miles the better Spider-Man. I'd also always viewed the whole Spider-Gwen thing as a bit of a tacky gimmick. Okay, look, when I was younger, I had my own ideas for what I wanted from Spider-Man, and I wasn't always that eager to step out of that box. Since that point, as many of you who've been watching for a while can probably tell, I've kind of matured as a, well, I don't know, what should I call myself? A fiction discussion boy. Well, that's not the ideal name, but I'll run with it. Anything to not call myself a critic. Watching movies isn't about what I want. If I just want to watch something entirely based around what I want, I should just make a movie myself. And I did. And it won the award for Best Comedy at the Robinson Film Awards. Just wanted to let you guys know that if you didn't already know, I like to share things with you. It's not about bragging. I swear it's not about bragging. You want evidence it's not about bragging? Okay, it didn't get that high of a grade as my student project at university, and got rejected from most of the festivals it was submitted to. Ah, well, I think it's good. Not only is Into the Spider-Verse a damn superb, absolutely divine movie, it absolutely won me over too. So, well done, Into the Spider-Verse. You have the prestigious status of winning me, a guy, over. But I mean, okay, also swiping the Oscar for Best Animated Feature from Disney and Pixar. Pretty damn badass power move right there. Especially with how certain Disney were that they were gonna win. I always love how, like, the Oscar images are always, like, two people hugging looking sad. Because as far as the Academy is concerned, all movies have to be about sad stuff. So the film opens with Peter Parker, the one and only Spider-Man, introducing himself at the top of his game before cutting to Miles Morales, an ordinary kid living in Brooklyn. And first of all, I love this. I'm gonna stop it right there, just say I love this framing device. Establishing Spider-Man as this legendary urban legend out there living it up before cutting to an ordinary person inhabiting his world. I kind of borrowed that from my incredibly rushed short film, The Marvelous Tales of Spider-Man, where we introduce Spidey before cutting to Leo, our protagonist. Leo doesn't become Spider-Man like Miles, though. He just discovers his own strength as an ordinary guy. It's a very, very rushed film, and it doesn't make any sense at all, but I like to think it has heart. So Miles is being transferred from his ordinary school to Brooklyn Vision's Academy after winning enrollment in a lottery. but he doesn't want to go. He wants to be with his people rather than the brainiest of the brainy. He doesn't want to hang out with the special, the gifted, the elite, the wealthy. So let's quickly take a peek into the pages of this new version of Miles Morales, as he's quite a different kid to his Ultimate Comics counterpart. See, as mentioned before, Miles in the Ultimate Universe was a great concept restrained by the writing. We tackled matters like stepping into the boots of Spider-Man, stepping into a legacy that's bigger than any one person. We saw his life as Spidey take some different directions, but as far as who he was, it's rarely explored. Who is Miles Morales? Fortunately, Into the Spider-Verse has answers. Miles is a man of the people. He likes his community, and he's like back. He's alternative, non-conformist, charismatic, and on top of all that, he's an artist. This creates a little distance between him and his father, Jefferson Davis, a by-the-book cop. So a key difference already between Miles and Peter fundamentally: Peter Parker dreamed of the power to overcome his everyday struggles, only to learn that gaining power wouldn't fix that. Miles, on the other hand, loves the things that Peter wanted to escape from. He loves his life as an everyman. He doesn't want to be special or gain an advantage. He wants to be authentic. He's got a profound respect and love for the culture that surrounds him, and the mark he wants to leave on the world is one that stays true to himself. It's his uncle Aaron who Miles takes after the most. Cooler than cool, a little mysterious, he nurtures Miles' creativity and alternativism. There's less distance between the two because of that. It's Aaron who Miles goes to for advice, because he wants to impress a girl at Vision's Academy. Oh! And Aaron and Miles head into the subway to create artwork together. This is where Miles is bit by an escaped Alchemax spider. Now, this film has a lot of fun with Miles trying to manage his newfound abilities, his stickum powers, if you like. It's safe to say that he probably has the most trouble adapting out of any of our on-screen Spider-Men to get an origin story. As he stumbles about, he accidentally rips Gwen's hair out when his hands get stuck to her head, and he's chased down by the truant officer and he can't stop sticking to things around him. He's got a point of reference though, Spider-Man. So he heads back into the subway for answers, where he stumbles across a massive operation. He witnesses Peter Parker, the original Spider-Man, trying to stop the Kingpin from starting his Super Collider device and being killed by Kingpin in the process. In his last moments, Peter entrusts Miles with destroying the Collider using a USB device, but Miles is chased out of the subway by the Prowler. We've also got the very first Green Goblin in any Spider-Man film to have a purple hood, so there's certainly that. So in wake of the death of Spider-Man, Spider-Man costumes are sold all around New York City. There are major tributes, and Miles picks up a suit. Now, this is quite different from Ultimate Comics All New Spider-Man, where the very idea of wearing a Spider-Man costume after the death of Peter was just this heinous, offensive thing. Now, here everybody's doing it. So Miles asks the store clerk, who is our Stan Lee cameo for this film, if the suit will fit, to which Stan Lee tells him it always fits eventually. So in his suit, Miles begins testing his new abilities in order to live up to the legend, but trips over an untied shoelace, causing him to fall and land on the USB device, destroying it. So, NYC mourns the death of their hero, and Miles Morales goes to Peter Parker's grave. But he's met with another Peter, a different Peter. This is Peter B. Parker, emphasis on the B. So, Peter B. Parker is, in my opinion, easily one of the greatest adaptations of Peter Parker you'll ever find. This absolute legend, this absolute king among men, is in the top tier of Spider-Man adaptations. He's a Peter in his late 30s, approaching 40, going a little gray, and boy is that ever refreshing for a film version of Spider-Man who's usually just in high school all the time. This man is way past his prime. He and MJ were married and divorced because he wasn't sure if he wanted kids. Aunt May has died. He's gained a little weight, and I must stress, not much. He's still in good shape, much better shape than myself, just a little more chub than the typical Spider-Man. I guess the thing you've still got to take into account is the fact that the spider bite speeds up the metabolism, making it very hard to gain weight, so I guess he really must have been overeating in order to get the little bit of pudge that he does. Still, the reputation as the fat Spider-Man, get real, see some actual fat people. Peter B. Parker, though, just a welcome change of pace. He's a lot more jaded. He's resigned himself to the fact that he has to be Spider-Man, even though he really doesn't want to anymore. He no longer takes any kind of pleasure in being Spider-Man at this point. It's an incredibly isolating experience for him. See, I generally prefer a teenage Spider-Man because typically adult Spider-Man has a track record of losing that everyman factor. He's effectively got a harem of different babes or runs a major tech company or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that Peter Parker shouldn't be able to bang the occasional hottie or hold down a decent job. Sheesh, I'm not asking for Zeb Wells' forced terminal spider loser, but being Spider-Man would logically get in the way of some things. And being an adult, working at functioning relationships and careers, does take a lot of work, and can have lots of stumbles along the way. Peter B. Parker is a man who has stumbled hard, and his nihilism towards being Spider-Man is completely believable in turn. So Kingpin's Super Collider was made to transport people from other dimensions over to this one, as a means of getting back his family after they died fleeing from him, discovering that he's a violent crime boss trying to kill Spider-Man. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, I guess. And that is how Peter B. Parker is here. Peter B. very reluctantly agrees to mentor Miles as the two set out to Alchemax Labs to steal a new goober to shut down the Super Collider. We learn a few things here. Miles can turn invisible, and that Peter B.'s atoms can't really withstand being in a different dimension for long, and if he's there too long, he'll disintegrate. There they are intercepted by the creator of the Collider, Olivia Octavius. She is Doc Ock in this universe. Okay, great. A twist I legitimately didn't see coming. Refresh my memory for those that remember, was Ock in any of the trailers or promotional material? Because this really caught me by surprise at the time. So, Peter B keeps Ock distracted while Miles decides to steal the entire computer because he can't find the data he needs for the goober. Ock's desktop is just a massive mess. Such is life with very smart people, it seems. As the two escape, Miles learns how to web swing, but Ock gets the computer back. However, she is defeated by a mysterious new hero, Spider-Woman, revealed to be Gwen Stacy, the girl Miles liked at Vision's Academy, who it turns out is also from another dimension and was at Vision's Academy because she was following her spider sense. No idea how she enrolled, though. That's actually, it's a very tightly written movie, but that is the one thing that feels like a bit of an oversight to me. I can use my imagination, though, I guess. So Gwen persuades the two Spider-Men to head to Aunt May's, and this is one of my favorite scenes, as these two people who have grieved each other meet again. Older, tired, and hurting. Gwen is also hurting because her best friend in her dimension was a Peter Parker who died in her arms. Miles is witnessing a lot of pain that comes with being Spider-Man playing out in front of him. This is the destiny he's got to step up to. But also, I love that this is a recreation of one of my favorite moments in the comic series, Spider-Man, where 616 Peter meets Ultimate Aunt May. I think this scene does it a lot better, though, because there's less drama going on with Aunt May wanting to kill him at first. You've also got the fact that Miles Morales in this version doesn't know Aunt May yet, and the version of Gwen Stacy that's in attendance this time isn't fucking obnoxious. Seriously, Ultimate Gwen, what happened to you? Aunt May allows the Spider-Folk access to this universe's Spider-Man's lair to create a new goober, and this universe's Peter is a really cool juxtaposition with Peter B, as this universe's Peter really was kind of the ideal Spider-Man. He loved being Spider-Man. He was at his prime. He had a massive lair, while Peter B is more the reality of being Spider-Man. Shit hurts. This lair is also just full of references to Spidey's history, including various different suits. And it's here where we discover that 3 other Spider people came to Aunt May's for help first. Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker and her robot spider friend, and Peter Porker, a spider bit by a radioactive pig, which is just a hilarious subversion. The Spider People determine that one Spider-Man has to stay behind and sacrifice themselves in order to get the other Spider People home and save the multiverse, but Miles believes he should step up so that nobody has to die. With this, the other Spider People test Miles, except for Peter B asking the others to cool it. Miles gets overwhelmed, he sees that the other Spider People don't believe in him, and so he leaves. See, I kind of thought before this film came out that having other Spider People present for Miles' origin story would make things easier, but that's not really the case, because not only does Miles have the challenge of becoming Spider-Man and discovering his way of being Spider-Man, but he's in the company of established Spider people, most of which at the top of their game, so he's suffering from imposter syndrome, and that's a really relatable thing. So Miles heads to Uncle Aaron, but makes a horrifying discovery that Aaron is the Prowler. Miles masks up and the Prowler chases him through the city before he loses him. So Miles heads back to Aunt May's to tell the other Spider people his discovery when they're ambushed by Ock, Tombstone, Prowler, and Scorpion. Wait, hang on. So in this movie we've got Kingpin, Doc Ock, Tombstone, Scorpion, and Prowler. Pretty sure we saw the Green Goblin earlier as well. The Sinister Six? No, for real though, I don't understand why the Sinister Six are the be-all and end-all for Sony when their defining trait is that there are 6 of them. It's a constantly rotating lineup. For all it matters, Homecoming had a Sinister Six. This movie has a Sinister Six. Anyway, sorry, back to the keynote. I love a good ambush. I loved the high school fight in The Amazing Spider-Man 1, and I love this. Seeing enemies strike Spider-Man in an intimate place he can usually call home? And this fight doesn't disappoint, as we have tons of different Spider people, all with different styles, going up against different villains, again, with very different styles. Peter B has that quintessentially spider-like style of movement, Gwen is very graceful and ballet-like, Noir is more of a brawler, and we've got this very unpredictable style for Penny Parker that switches between cutesy and brutal. Spider-Ham uses cartoon logic to fight his enemies, making him incredibly OP, and Miles is still trying to figure his style out. Even Aunt May gets in on the action with a baseball bat. It is badass, Alfred. Prowler gets Miles cornered on the roof, ready to strike, and Miles unmasks, knowing that his own uncle probably wouldn't hurt him. Kingpin orders Aaron to kill this new Spidey, but Aaron decides to step back, wanting nothing more to do with any of this. Kingpin shoots Aaron. Miles takes Uncle Aaron to a nearby alley where Aaron confesses that he let Miles down with his criminal career. He tells Miles that he's the best of us and to keep on going. So for a quick comparison, this version of Uncle Aaron is far more sympathetic than he was portrayed as in the Ultimate Comics All-New Spider-Man, where on numerous occasions, even knowing who Miles was, he tried to kill him. He was a far less redeemable character in the Ultimate Comics All-New Spider-Man run, while here, he's far more nuanced. Again, Into the Spider-Verse, it just elevates that Miles Morales lore. Jefferson Davis finds this new Spider-Man stood over the corpse of his brother. Miles gets away, and Jefferson puts out an arrest warrant for the new Spider-Man. So back at Miles' dorm, all the Spider people take a moment to reflect on their losses, their sacrifices, and how part of being Spider-Man is understanding that you can't save everyone. They all get ready to say goodbye to Miles, and it's been decided. Peter B will stay behind to stop the Collider. He'll sacrifice himself to save the multiverse. Miles just isn't ready for that. He webs Miles up so he can't chase him, including his mouth, so he doesn't have to hear him protest. And so the Spider people head to Fisk Industries. So then Jefferson Davis goes to Miles' dorm wanting to speak to him, but Miles is powerless. He can't talk back, he can't open the door. The emotional barrier between these two is now a physical one. This is enough for Miles to finally prompt his Venom Blast on command and escape the webs, and so he sets out to Aunt May's to prepare for battle. Now there's a really wonderful visual cue here. Earlier in the film, when Miles was looking at the different Spidey suits, his face would be reflected below the neckline on the glass. But in this scene, his face is right in line with the Spidey mask. He's ready to live up to the legacy. The suit will fit. This film is full of wonderful little visual cues like this to tell its story and themes. It's the culmination now of every lesson that Miles has learned. He's ready to take the leap of faith. He's made the Spider-Man costume his own, and okay, I know I'm not the first to make this observation, it's literally written in the script, but when Miles free falls into New York, the shot is upside down. Miles isn't falling, Spider-Man is rising. Ready or not, he's here. Unquestionably, Miles Morales is Spider-Man. So the Spider people break into Fisk Industries to shut down the Collider, which risks the merge and destruction of the multiverse. Wait, dimensional merge, where have I heard that before? Go Spider-Chew and zap to the extreme! They're intercepted by the villains once again as they throw down in the Collider, but suddenly Ock's tentacles betray her. They're being controlled by an invisible Spider-Man. And so, in his iconic costume, the new Spider-Man, Miles Morales, appears, now able to go invisible and Venom Blast on command. With the villains defeated, Miles inputs the goober, and the Spideys share a heartfelt goodbye. Gwen and Miles are now officially friends, kindred spirits. But Kingpin emerges, ready for a fight, out for blood. Peter B tries to help Miles, but Miles convinces him to go home, giving back what Peter B taught him. It's a leap of faith. Maybe when Peter B gets home, he can make things right, make a better life for himself. After raising Miles as a Spider-Man, maybe he's ready to raise a kid. And so Peter B is sent home with hope for his future, and it's up to the new Spider-Man, Miles Morales, to take down the Kingpin once and for all. Now the Collider is just going nutso, phasing parts of different dimensions in and out, and Kingpin gets what he wanted. His family are back, and they witness him trying to kill another Spider-Man. Once again, horrified, they flee. Kingpin has now lost everything. There's nothing left for him to do but to fight. Jefferson Davis goes to investigate Fisk Industries and sees Kingpin almost kill the new Spider-Man, with the same blow that killed the original Peter Parker. But Spider-Man gets back up and uses his Venom Blast shoulder touch to defeat Kingpin, sending him into the Collider and jamming it. And with that, Kingpin is defeated, the multiverse is saved. Miles calls Jefferson and the two finally connect, before he decides for his Spider-Man to team up with him in the future. And with that, our new Spider-Man gets his final monologue and final swing, where we get a little glimpse of the futures of the other Spider people we've met, including Peter B making amends with Mary Jane. Miles tells the audience that anyone can wear the mask, anyone can be Spider-Man, and we get the message that what makes you different is what makes you Spider-Man. And so, the film ends. Well done, Sony. Remember how in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 you made it so that spider bites were only compatible with Parker DNA? Look how far you've come! Into the Spider-Verse does incredible things with the Spider-Verse premise. It's not about Morland traveling dimensions and killing each Spider-Man, forcing them to all team up. It's about how these different people live up to that legacy and reinterpret that mantle, and the things that make them different from one another define them. Into the Spider-Verse treats Spider-Man not just as a character or handful of characters, but as a philosophy, a way of life, a rite of passage, the point of self-actualization, each with their own defining trait. Miles Morales is an artist, and that artistry is evident in his Spider-Man, how he moves, how he fights, how he swings, how his costume looks. This Miles is actualized far beyond how Miles was in the comics at the time. Into the Spider-Verse redefines this character. It redefines Peter and Gwen and Penny. Everyone here is reconstructed from the ground up for a story made all about a Spider-Man with imposter syndrome thrown into the deep end when he's only just gotten his powers, overwhelmed by the experienced spider people that surround him, their stories, their pain, all in front of his very eyes. And Into the Spider-Verse is just a masterclass in storytelling and putting the themes on screen rather than expressing it entirely through dialogue or action. It's the artistry of the shots, the composition. But then, okay, let's also talk foreshadowing. A problem I have with a lot of modern blockbusters is overly obvious foreshadowing. One egregious example being in Thor: Love and Thunder, Jane Foster wants her own catchphrase, and then at the end of the film she yells, "Eat my hammer!" And literally, as soon as they have that stupid conversation about catchphrases, you know exactly where it's going. Another example, look, I loved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but without spoiling anything, Kraglin and Cosmo, that's all I'll say. The second their arc starts, you know exactly where it's going. Done right, foreshadowing can offer a sense of catharsis, but at this point it feels like a trope. With Into the Spider-Verse, it's much smaller, more granular details that contribute to a bigger picture. Like how Miles' reflection doesn't line up with the Spider-Man suit in the glass cabinet at first, but then when he returns, it does, coinciding with Stan Lee telling him it always fits eventually. Uncle Aaron's dating advice being the shoulder touch used against the Kingpin with a Venom Blast. And there's just so much more than even that. The writing is just so tightly crafted and all feels so natural. Miles goes through a lot in this film, but he's consistently likable. I always want to root for him. Heck, same goes for all of these characters. All of the Spider people are really likable and compelling. Then there's just the incredibly inventive narrative framing devices, the character introductions to each Spider-Person as they get their own little monologue, complete with these splash page shots of their defining moments and a comic cover. It's cathartic when Miles finally gets his, and something I want to stress is that I haven't even mentioned the animation yet. Everything I've mentioned so far would all be possible in live action. These things are not just attributed to Into the Spider-Verse being an animated film. But okay, let's talk animation. So for one, I do think a Spider-Verse storyline ultimately lends well to animation. It's a larger-than-life story, commanding larger-than-life visuals, and what better way to achieve that than through the art of animation? Makes sense. Now, with the 3 additional Spider-People being Penny Parker, Noir, and Ham, they each get their own animation styles. With Noir, everything is black and white, high contrast, yet also very detailed. Ham is animated like a Looney Tunes cartoon, and Penny takes inspiration from anime. They're all really nicely realized and look distinctive without being jarring. Then there's the core animation style, which is absolutely gorgeous. There's a very printed-to-paper feel with the animation here, with both print lines and print dots present. The backgrounds take on a very sort of hand-painted look. The characters all have cel-shade style lines accentuating their details and features, and the faces have a very comic pop art aesthetic. Everything appears to be rendered at 15 frames per second, emulating more of a 2D animated feel. A CGI animated film has never felt quite so handcrafted, and it proved to be such a refreshing change of pace compared to the more commonplace Pixar feel of most animated films at the time. The film is absolutely gorgeous. The cinematography stands on its own, the visuals are phenomenal, but the animation only elevates this, and it feels appropriate as Into the Spider-Verse feels like a celebration of Spider-Man's over 50-year history. Not just in terms of comics, but it's packed with references to the movies, merchandise, TV shows. It's all here. So having a comic booky aesthetic for the film only elevates it further. It means visually, it stays true to the roots of the character. Even down to subtitle moments using comic book text boxes, thought bubbles, and speech bubbles. Visually, it does not get better than this. Let's also quickly talk the score by Daniel Pemberton as well. It's more soundscapes than melodies this time, as it is quite difficult to memorize many themes here, but each Spider-Person comes with their own style of arrangement, be it orchestral for Peter Parker, the rock arrangements for Gwen, the hip-hop for Miles. There's a lot of different textures on display here. And the soundtrack album is full of memorable tracks, including Sunflower, What's Up Danger, just to name a few, and they all feel like kind of a playlist that Miles would listen to. They kind of give us an image, or I guess an audio image, of Miles' world, how he perceives Brooklyn. This movie and its music and everything just leave no stone unturned. Any chance to elevate its ideas. Figures the end credits theme is literally called Elevate. I get the sense they knew what they were doing there. The cast are also really strong. Shameik Moore is perfect as this young Miles Morales. There's a lot of youthful spirit to his performance, juxtaposed with Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker, who turns in possibly one of the least conventional performances as Spider-Man, but one that absolutely fits an older, more jaded Peter. And he absolutely nails the comedy beats too. And of course, Hailee Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy, brilliant. Everyone here is great. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is not just a Spider-Man movie. It is the culmination and celebration of an over 50-year legacy. It's a film that not only celebrates Spider-Man, but reflects on you, the person who, at some stage in their life, has wanted to be Spider-Man. It's a gift for Spider-Man fans, wrapped up in a beautifully composed bow across the board. Into the Spider-Verse is inspiring, it's beautiful, it's a masterpiece. And the fact that I opted to skip this one's cinematic run simply because I didn't like Sony was a clear example of chopping off the nose to spite the face. Because it doesn't matter who made this. It's phenomenal. Before we wrap up, I do quickly want to talk about the alternate universe cut, which is included on the Blu-rays. This is a cut that includes some animatics for scenes that never made it to animation. And interesting enough, what we have here is a fairly different movie overall. This version draws a bit more inspiration from Ultimate Comics' all-new Spider-Man. Heck, the Spider-Verse aspects don't really start until the second half of the film. In this version, Miles Morales has his best friend, Ganke Lee, and he helps him to become Spider-Man, as the two study Spider-Man's history, including an in-universe Spider-Man movie. That's the biggest change, and as fun as some of these new additions are, the theatrical release flows a lot better. It's a much more well-paced film. I don't mind a film that takes its time, but it definitely feels like the alternate universe cut struggles to balance between being an Ultimate Spider-Man movie and being a Spider-Verse movie, where the final cut is more of an organic marriage between a Miles Morales movie with the Spider-Verse as the backdrop. Ganke Lee being such a major presence here also feels, I guess, just a little bit too similar to Spider-Man Homecoming. Obviously, Ganke is the original rather than Ned, but 2 films with Ganke as a major character on the jump would perhaps be just a bit much. And I guess, giving that kind of dynamic over to Peter Parker, you kind of need to rethink Miles Morales in that case, just to, make them different. Even though obviously Spider-Man Homecoming and Into the Spider-Verse are 2 completely different things, you still need Miles Morales to be his own Spider-Man. That being said, Ganke is still here in the final cut, just cameos. I'm wondering how they'll differentiate him from Ned if he does appear in Across the Spider-Verse. I think the Miles Morales PS5 game did a nice job with that. So that's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I just cannot praise this film enough. I'm incredibly excited for the sequel, Across the Spider-Verse, which, yes, I will definitely go to see in the cinema this time. I'm gonna go hard. I got an elephant. Next up is the next chapter for the MCU Spider-Man with Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. So I'll see you there. Now, if you want your name in the credits of my videos, you can do so for as little as $1 a month over on Patreon, which would mean a lot to me. And now a special shout out for the patrons in the $10 tier, whose names I will be reading out in a funny, silly anime girl voice, at the expense of my dignity. So those names.
Kale Bennett, That Jordo, Ken K, Legendary Ray Ray, Dr. SP here with your PSA for the week. Be sure to brush twice a day, or don't. What do I care? I'm not a dentist. Sergio, Source a Skeptic, and I love the Boss Baby movies. I'm their biggest fan. Ooh.
Oh, I feel so dirty, but I didn't hate that. And then there's the good folks in the $5 tier, who are Broski, SSS06, and Dazzle Fizzle. Guys, thank you so much for your generosity, and as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Farewell.